did you guys ever have a situation where you found the most perfect fabric and you knew exactly what you wanted to make with it? And then you look around and you look at some patterns and you find what you think is the perfect pattern for this fabric. But you second guess yourself. And then you second guess yourself some more. Until finally you're just completely in sewing paralysis mode. That is what happened with this coat project. Stick around for a minute and I'll tell you all about it. I'm Ginny and this is the Big Sew Along, and today we are talking about winter coats, specifically my journey to what I would consider my perfect winter coat. This journey started 3 years ago when I found this beautiful green, this is a selvage edge here, but this is the beautiful green 100% cotton velvetine that I got from Latoff Fabrics. And like I said, I got this 3 years ago. This fabric is absolutely to die for. It's lush and it looks like the color's coming out pretty true on my screen. It's, I don't know, I had people describe it as olive or avocado. It might look a little more foresty. There, that, it looks like that. Look how beautiful that is. Okay, so that's where this started. I knew when I got this fabric, and I think I got the end bolt of it, so it was like 3.5 yards maybe. I knew when I got this that I really wanted to make it into a winter coat. And I had just recently purchased the Merchant & Mills September coat, and that is originally what I thought I was gonna make with this. But after looking at a few of these online, even though I love the way the coat looks, I felt like it was actually too much of a coat, too much of a formal coat for my lifestyle. I wanted something a little sportier and a little more, I don't know, maybe avant-garde, I don't know. But not long after that, I came across this coat here from Fibre Mood. This is the Maggie coat from Fibre Mood. And this, I thought, was perfect. I was completely sold on this coat. However, I ran into a couple of problems right away. First of all, I got locked out of my Fibre Mood account and couldn't download my pattern. I couldn't figure out, like, it made me keep resetting my password. I just could not get in. I finally got in, downloaded my password, had my pattern printed, and then realized that I didn't have the directions, which I will get to in a little while. I was super frustrated. I went back to the Fibre Mood website. I could not find the instructions anywhere, so by this point it was like January, and I like gave up. I was like, forget it, I'm not making this coat this year. So the next fall rolls around, and I still really want to make this coat. I know at this point that I really want something sort of sporty, so I was looking for patterns, and I came across this one here from Burda. This is Burda 5923. I kind of wanted it to be a little bit longer than this, but I thought this was probably a good option. At the end of the day, I just decided I didn't really like this that much. It seemed a little too standard, maybe. I then came across the So Liberated Sylvan jacket and coat, which I believe had just come out recently at that point. And I really like the look of this coat. I did buy the Burda pattern, by the way. Of course, I decided against it after I purchased it. Same thing with the Sylvan. I'm not mad about the Sylvan though, because I do want to make this. I think this would be a really cool fall, spring kind of coat. I would love it in like a Melton wool or, I don't know, something like that. I just decided at the end of the day it wasn't right for this project. So again, I let it go for the year. Then this past summer, I was sort of into, you guys might remember, I was sort of into my like old patterns. And when I was searching around for Koos van den Akker patterns from Vogue, I came across this one here. This one is Vogue 1816. Now, I know this looks crazy, but what I thought was this is a really cool shape, and I'll just use the pattern without all the patchwork stuff for this coat. But again, I purchased it before it arrived in the mail, I had already decided that this wasn't really the style I wanted either. And then I came across this coat here that I think it's a Rundholz coat. I showed you guys back in the one of my fall like inspiration videos or something. And I really, really love this coat. And I really thought this could be really cool in the green velvet if I could figure it out. So one of you guys, and I apologize, I looked today and I couldn't find the comment, but one of you recommended the Darcy coat from Modern Sewing Company. So I bought the pattern. Of course, I bought the pattern. And one of the key features of this coat, though, that I like from Rundholz is these big tied pockets. So I do have the tie pocket pattern from, you guys, I can't remember the name of the company that made the pattern for the pockets, but I'll link it for you below with everything else. I've made that pattern before, that little pocket thing before, and I really, really loved it, and I thought it would be perfect. And then after I thought about it for about 3 weeks, I realized I was going to have problems with this pocket, because the pocket pattern calls for you to self-line the pocket so that when you tie the ties, it's the same on both sides. And I realized that this fabric, this velveteen, is just not gonna do that. Like, I could make that, but I don't think that the ties are gonna look nice. And I also thought top stitching around 2 layers of that velveteen on top of the coat was not gonna look nice at all. I thought of a million different ways I could try to finagle this pattern to work. And then a couple of weeks ago, I just said, you know what, Jenny, just go back to your original idea. This Fibre Mood Maggie coat is what you really, really want. This is the coat you want. Just make this coat. So I went back to the Fibre Mood site, and lo and behold, I found the directions in about 30 seconds. They're on the main pattern page. It's super easy. It says instructions, like right at the bottom. So when you calm down and take a minute to actually just read something, it's a lot easier. Something I need to remember. Anyways, I found the directions. I immediately came downstairs, figured out what size I wanted, and cut out my coat. So I made a few changes on this coat. I did shorten it by a full 7 inches. It was really, really long on me. I'm not 100% sure about the length now. I could probably have left it a little bit longer, but this is actually a really good length for me, and right below the knee is really what I was working for. It calls for a separating zip. I used a double separating zip so I can unzip it from the bottom as well as from the top. That's just way easier for me when I'm getting in and out of my car. I also shortened the sleeves, and I'm pretty sure I shortened them 3 inches. But I wasn't accounting for the fact that when you put the elastic in the sleeve, it's going to sort of bunch it up and make it a little bit shorter. So I felt like they were about 1 inch too short. Now, I have since then gone in and fixed it. So it's fixed now. I added about 1.5 inches, and it's perfectly fine. I just haven't put the elastic back in it yet, so I don't have pictures of it completed. But the sleeves are now longer, and now the coat really is my dream coat. It calls for a snap here on the button, on the zip cover, and I didn't really want like a black snap here. My elastic is black, the zipper was black. I could have used like a brass snap there, but I felt like that was awkward with the black, and maybe I could have used a black, but for some reason I felt like it would just look like a spot. Anyways, I ended up putting like a little slanted buttonhole right there, and I happen to have an exact match for the green in a button, so I used a button instead of a snap. Additionally, going back to the sleeves, they're not really supposed to have elastic all the way around. The elastic just goes around like the outside edge, like the outside of your cuff, like the outside of your wrist, not all the way around. I haven't put the elastic back in yet, and I think I probably will do that next time instead of putting elastic all the way around. The other thing is they have this elastic drawstring with those like toggle things that hold it in place. Those toggles are really supposed to be at the side seams of the coat, but the directions for doing that, you make the casing, and then you thread the cord through the front until you get to the hole at the side and put your thing in, and then you go around to the other side. And then, so you have elastic sticking out, the elastic cord sticking out of both front ends, and you're supposed to just like edge stitch that and clip off the extra elastic. Again, that would have been fine, except that my elastic is black and it looked like, it just looked like, it looked awkward. I just didn't like it. So I closed up those holes on the sides, and I just ran my elastic from the front all the way around and back to the other front. I think those are the only changes that I did make to this coat. The only thing I would do that I didn't do, I would raise the pockets, which is normal for me, and I can't figure out why I didn't get that before I started. I'm up 5'3", so I almost always have to raise the pockets. I should have done that in this one. It's not, I don't think it looks bad, but it's not very convenient. It's not very practical to have your like keys like stuck down by your knees when you're like trying to grab them. Next time I'll just raise the pockets. Okay, so as for working with this velvet, this is 100% cotton, so there's no stretch in this except like minimal mechanical stretch. But I don't have a lot of experience working with velvet or velveteen. This is a velveteen. I have some. So there were some things that I knew to do right off the bat. I cut this pattern flat, like one piece at a time. I didn't fold my fabric and cut two pieces out at the same time. And I cut it with the plush side up. And I used weights and a rotary cutter instead of pins and scissors. I used both, but it just depends on the project. This was definitely a situation where I wanted to use weights and my rotary cutter. I did try it with some pins, but you can see pretty quickly that it distorts the edge of the fabric really a lot when you use pins. So I just went with my weights and rotary cutter. Then I should have used stay tape on my zipper front before I put the zipper in. And you can see in this picture there's a little bit of wrinkling. To be honest, I think it looks worse in the picture than it does in real life. That might just be me pretending, but I really should have used stay tape under there before I put the zipper in, and I just didn't think about it. Sewing this together, I could tell right away when I just did a quick sample, and because of the pile, when you use like a regular sewing foot, it shifts a lot. So I tried it just with a regular sewing foot first, and it shifted like I thought it would. So I moved to my walking foot, which I thought would be like the perfect solution. However, even though the walking foot was actually on the wrong side of the fabric, when I flipped it over to the right side, it left pretty deep track marks on my velveteen. Now this velveteen is steamed out pretty well in most cases. So I might have been okay with that, but I didn't really want to have to risk it. So I played around with my sewing machine for a bit, and I loosened the presser foot tension. Now my presser foot tension is usually at 4. I moved it down 2 notches, so it was at 2. That allowed me to sew my pieces together. I did need a lot of pins for this part, but it allowed me to sew almost everything together with no shifting of the fabric at all. So that was a pretty easy fix. Okay, and then the last thing is that this coat actually had like a fair amount of top stitching, and it was going to be kind of obvious. The first bit of top stitching you do is on the edge of these welt pockets. I just went in there with a regular sewing machine and a regular stitch, and I really did not like the way it looked. So again, I had to play around with some of this, and I'll show you a picture here what the 3 different stitches look like. The first one, I think, let me see here. So here's some samples of my top stitching. On the left, that is my regular thread tension, which is normally on my machine, that's a number 4, and that is with 1 single thread. The one in the middle there is when I reduced the thread tension to 3, so I just moved it down 1 notch, and that's also just 1 thread. And then the one on the far right, which is what I ended up going with, that is also a thread tension of 3, so a little bit lower than normal. Only for that I used 2 threads through the same needle instead of just 1. At the end of the day, I thought that that looked the best. It showed up the most on this pile fabric. The thing is, I don't know how much you can tell from these pictures, but when I just use the regular single thread and the regular thread tension, the thread gets buried right into that pile, so you really can't see the top stitching, which makes it look not very nice. It actually just looks like you have like a dark mark on your fabric there, really, in real life. So anyways, yeah, that's what I did. That's how I ended up with my Maggie coat. This was a bit of a daunting project. I really did need the directions for this because there were a couple of things that I was just confused about how some parts went together, so I definitely needed the directions. But the directions were perfectly clear and it went together really well, and I have to say I do really love this coat. Yeah, it's my favorite coat so far. I've made a few coats, but this is definitely my favorite. I particularly love it because for my birthday this year, my friend Marsha gave me this crazy hot pink fur hat, and I think it looks so good with my green coat. Yeah, so that's my winter coat. I will say that now that I have made this coat, I would definitely make it again. I would really like to make this in maybe like a linen or something for springtime. Yeah, I don't know that I would make, I would not make it again in velvet, I'm not gonna lie. but I would maybe make it in a different wool for another winter coat. I forgot to say that I used that nylon quilted lining in this too, which so it's warm, like a parka warm. So the next time I wouldn't do that. I would use like a lighter weight lining. Anyways, I love this coat and I would definitely make it again. And I'd be curious to know if anybody else has made this coat or any of the other patterns that I suggested. I would be really interested to know if anybody's made that Darcy coat or the Merchant and Mills September coat, the Sylvan jacket, any of those. Let me know. And that, I think, is it for this week. Until next week, you guys, I wish you all... Oh, of course, I always forget. Join us over on Discord. Chat it up. Until next week, happy sewing.